You know what you're doing from there, right?
You guys have to share a microphone because you can't hear live stream.
Good evening, welcome to the Town of Cicero Planning Board meeting. Would you please join us in the pledge?
Exactly.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First item is the approval of the minutes from the June 2nd meeting. Everybody have a chance to review? Any questions or comments? We have a motion to be approved as printed.
Second.
Mr. Rossito.
Yes.
Mr. Abbott.
Yes.
Mr. Schneider.
Yes.
Mr. Bloss.
Yes.
And I vote yes. Consent approved. At this point, the board will take public comment on any application that's currently before the board. Please note that if you want to address the board and there's a public hearing, you need to hold that comment until the public hearing. And also note that this is not a question and answer session, but simply an opportunity for you to provide any comments that you may have on the application. So with that, is there anybody that would like to address the board? Giving no reason to come up, we'll close the public input. Move on to the first agenda item, which is a public hearing for St. Francis of Assisi, property at 7820-298. Mark, you haven't reviewed that agenda yet, right?
Well, I have reviewed the initial submittal and provided comments, but we have not received a plan back that addresses those comments.
So I presume we'll open the public hearing, take any comment, leave the public hearing open, and then move on.
Yes.
Do you want to address the board?
I just want to let you know that we have retained an engineer to locate the site, the hookups for the water and sewer. We have a surveyor on standby, so hopefully that'll be completed shortly and I'll have everything in Mr. Parrish.
For the record, can you just give your name?
Joe Lupia, St. Francis Parish.
Thank you, Joe. With that, we'll open the public hearing portion of the meeting for this topic. Is there anybody here that would like to address the board? We'll go on to the next agenda item and leave the public hearing open. Next item is 6225 East Taft Road. This is a proposed construction of 2 new buildings.
Good evening, thank you. Good to be back. Brian Bouchard with CHA, presenting on behalf of the owner for this application. Quite a while back, we did have a chance to introduce this project before. So it's 6225 Taft Road. It's the existing, there's dog daycare along with United Rentals storage. There's some vacant land to the west side of the site. We've reviewed the owner's intent to construct 2 additional buildings for flexible tenant space. Since that time, we've worked with the town's engineer to develop some of the more technical details and respond to all his comments, which we've done a few times, including the stormwater pollution prevention plan and drainage for the site, along with some more technical updates with curbing and such. We've added, because this is flexible tenant space, there are no known tenants. The intent is to build this and provide a space for somebody to move into. But we have, based on the town's desire to have a statement of, what the hours of operation would be on there, along with providing the building elevations, building materials, and the parking analysis, which there is plenty of parking on the site, but what we did was use the most strict parking calculation in the GC district for what would be office space, although we don't necessarily limit ourselves to office space. It could be somebody, like an insurance agent or somebody like that. It could be a trades craftsman, like a plumber, anything that would fall under the general uses allowed within the GC district. But because office was the more strict parking calculation, we provided those updates on the site plan as well. So we went through the utility plan, the connections for the sewer, drainage management, as I said, erosion control, photometrics, and work zone traffic control for the proposed entrance that will be on East Taft Road. We do have approval for that curb cut. It will be a right in, right out curb cut, so there won't be any crossing from the opposing lanes onto East Taft Road in or out of the site. So looking for your comments and feedback and site plan approval for this application.
You want to review I think the landscaping plan is new as well.
Yes, yeah, and if you guys remember, when we were going through some of the site updates for United Rental, there was a series of street trees that we did put in at the request of the board for that. So those street trees are there and planted already. We reflected that on the new landscape plan as well. And then the board's comments was to ensure that there was landscaping kind of up against the building, right, along the foundation line. So there are the entryways for sidewalk connections, and then in between that, we've provided a variety of plantings along the base in and amongst those sidewalk areas that are in front of the building, as well as some plantings that are along the side and rear of the property as well.
Open up to questions from the board, Mr. Rosito? Mr. Abbott?
I'm a little concerned about what happens with the area we shouldn't be building in. You know, you put little squiggly marks on a drawing, or you put some kind of a line there. It then becomes an issue for our codes people when they go to look at it. I'm wondering if we shouldn't have some sort of a fence, and that can be, I think, relatively simple. I mean, could do something that's not as ugly as the orange construction fence, but I would think something that would make it easy. So Steve and his crew, when they come, it's not a question of we move 5 feet off. He doesn't have to worry about getting his tape out.
Yeah, I do agree with that, and I'm sure you're referring to some of the history that happened in the rear of this property before. So providing, and I'm actually a proponent of the orange construction fence. It's pretty readily available on any, site contractor's yard.
Yeah, but
So-
I say that's the worst case. I mean, I'm not saying yellow orange
Just
fence.
something to
Whatever the
delineate.
next class up is from the yellow orange
Yeah,
fence.
understood.
Just for clarification, we're talking about the wetlands.
Yes.
Yeah, so there's the wetlands that are delineated on the map, and then there's the buffer area that we are staying out of with our pavement edge. So we'll make sure that we do delineate that edge prior to starting into the site disturbance.
I mean, ideally, if you put the Jersey barriers up there, we know Steve wouldn't have to worry about it all, but I don't think we necessarily need to have the expensive Jersey barriers to make everybody know that you don't build beyond that line.
Understood.
Doug, are you talking about during construction or something?
No, I'm talking about during construction and after, because what quite often has happened is, Steve goes out there and everything is hunky-dory, but 6-8 months later, there's been some pushing around and some filling, and next thing you know, we got an issue. And I think, so if we eliminate that issue by having a barrier there, that Steve, when he goes out for the first time, he sees a barrier, he knows where it is, everybody knows where it is. And if he's driving by 8 months later, he can very quickly see that it hasn't been moved.
Yeah, so understandably, let's get something set up for construction so the contractor can understand where that delineation line is. And then maybe it's something like either, I would choose something natural, whether it's like a cobblestone, like a large stones to keep the trespass in the future, after I'm gone and we're done with the approval, so that there's a barrier there. And if it's not, a larger stone, maybe it's something as simple as like a timber railing or something that you would see. So either,
Vegetation too. In
yeah,
fact, that's what the county recommends
okay.
in their review of it.
Understood. Yeah, so we'll make sure that delineation happens with one of those options. That's fine.
And the people will be able to leave your place and basically go east and get on the Topman Road to get to the light if they wanted to go left.
Correct. Our site is connected. It is one owner, so they would be able to go over to Topman and access that signal if they do want to go eastbound. Correct.
I'm good.
No further questions.
Mr. Marzio. Where are we with the fire department? I know they had a concern about the fire hydrant and talking about adding one, or was concerned about
Right, so,
circulation.
yeah, we did show, so these are one-story buildings, so we don't necessarily need a ladder truck and some of the more strict requirements that come along with that, but we did pull a fire truck through both entrances to make sure that the apparatus can approach the building and reach out with hoses or whatever they might need to be. So I believe we've addressed that comment on the plan with both the turning movements and the hydrant service that's needed.
Has that been provided to the fire department for their review? That's,
Mr. Chairman, I spoke with the fire department today. They revised those plans early on and I provided those to the fire department. There was concerns about fire apparatus, access and turning radiuses, concern about building height that was resolved. The building wanted to be less than 25 feet high. And they wanted the additional hydrant. But to meet the fire code requirements and distance from the building, they are proposing to a fire hydrant right next to the driveway entrance. on the south side.
Yeah.
So for those, they're satisfied with the plan.
and the hours of operation, I know you mentioned them on your comment letter, are they actually on the plan?
Yes, we added it to the plan. The intent is 7 AM to 5 PM for that office type of use. And obviously, when the tenant comes in, we also have excluded signage from this, right? We don't know what the signage is. So there will have to be a time when we do come back and visit this board. And if that hours change, because, you know, the doggy daycare itself is 8 to 8, 8 AM to 8 PM. So if there's something that changes based on that specific use where they do go over, past 5 o'clock and, it's a business that has to stay open after 5 until 7 or 8 PM. That can be part of the amended site plan that would come forward with things like the signage that are more specific to the tenant. So we can review that individually with you when the tenants come.
Why wouldn't we make it 8 to 8 right now? And if that's what doggy daycare is, why wouldn't we make it?
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense, right? Still the signage would have to come back, but I guess that's one less thing. It's not like it's gonna be, something that's open into the evening, 2 PM or 2 AM or something like that. So that would make sense to me. If you wanted to change that, I could change that.
The proposed signage, not the prescriptive requirements of sign orders.
You wouldn't need running frontage.
Okay, so even all the better to be a little more open to those hours, so that's fine. If it's something, maybe we'll say 7 to 8 PM, if that works, because, the other side, the United Rentals is 7 to 5, so it kind of covers what the businesses are that are on site. So if we could use 7 AM to 8 PM, and I'm sure any use that fits in there, whether it is somebody like an insurance agent that may stay open after 5, or if it's just a tradesperson that's within those hours, I think that would be perfectly fine. Of course, comfortable with it.
Gives you a little more, I mean, when you're trying to rent the place, the minute you give a
Yeah,
give
understood.
the tenant renter time, I mean,
Yeah.
7 to 8 sounds quite reasonable.
For most, yeah, exactly. Thank you.
Steve, have you got anything else?
Nothing else, thank you.
Mark?
Yes, you talked about the signage. The other thing I just want to note is that they have some overhead doors for loading at the rear of the buildings. And it's pretty constricted space-wise back here, particularly over here. So they're really going to be limited in the size of the vehicles that can be used for deliveries to these, for whatever use they have there. So
Box truck,
yeah,
box
basically a
truck.
box truck, yeah.
Yeah, the turning movement that is shown is just a straight truck. It's a 28-foot long box truck. So this would be catering to more like the, plumbing supply or something like that. It would be small deliveries. There's no reason that these types of spaces with this square footage would need something larger than that. So the idea is to accommodate that. Because there is space in the back for it. It's not as much space as you would like for a loading dock for a WD-67 trailer, but it's something that can provide, again, flexibility with the tenant spaces to provide that service area in the rear and not have the front with the parking area encumbered by any of those deliveries.
Yeah, I think the larger vehicles can get into the site, but they just wouldn't be able to get behind the buildings if there is some sort of tractor trailer delivery or something. So
Understood. And the owner understands that as well.
So would it be understood based on our conversation here, Neil, or does something need to be?
I
don't think that has to be any kind of condition. I mean, it's just, the physics of the site really determine it.
Exactly.
What I say wouldn't matter.
Right.
Mark, anything else?
No, that's it.
So the plan is for you to provide an updated plan with that.
I mean, if we could get an approval, I think that's just a simple note revision, we have the hours on there, I just have to change that. And
I mean, the landscaping or whatever is gonna go along the wetland.
yeah, I can definitely add that as well to the final plan if it makes sense, and I don't have to come back, but that'd be appreciated for sure.
And, also,
But I think probably should agree as to what's gonna be there.
I agree.
So if it's again, a timber guide rail or fence or something, to me would make more sense. I mean, if it's just large stones or something like that, plantings might work also if it's a tree, a substantial tree that,
We've done
It would
that
be
in the
back there.
past. Plantings.
yeah, I don't like the blocks because the block can move pretty easily,
If this location, trying to force you to get a buffer permit, and DC required. That already exists. Just so-
I'd be fine with committing to a timber rail. I think it serves the function of not being mobile with something like a skid steer, like a rock that you just get picked up. And it's probably going to do a little better than a row of arborvitaes or something like that, which could get easily cut as well. So a timber railing is perfectly fine.
You're comfortable adding that to the motion?
Timber rail fence, right?
yeah, be provided along the New York State
Buffer, yeah.
DEC wetland buffer.
To offset and protect the wetlands and protected area.
Yep, that sounds good.
Do you have anything else?
No.
Joe, would you like to propose a standard secret, please? Yes. Propose a standard secret.
That's an important motion.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Don. Mr. Aceto?
Yes.
Mr. Abbott? Yes. Mr. Snyder?
Yes.
Mr. Voss?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Neil, would you present a motion for approval?
Yes, you're going to move for the adoption of a resolution approving the application known as 6225 East Taft Road LLC, 6225 East Taft Road, proposed construction of 2 new buildings. This approval is strictly conditioned on the following. 1, the color schemes and renderings and or elevations presented by the applicant to the planning board in regards to this application shall be incorporated by reference into the site plan and the board's approval thereof. Accordingly, the actual project must substantially conform to the items as presented herein. 2, the applicant will provide a timber rail fence to provide a delineation to set off and protect the wetland as wetland protected area. This delineating fence shall be in a form and substance acceptable to the code enforcement officer. 3, the hours of operation shall not exceed 7 a.m. to 8 p.m.
Somebody like to make that as a motion?
Make that in form of motion.
Do you have a second?
Second.
Mr. Aceto?
Yes.
Mr. Abbott? Yes. Mr. Snyder?
Yes.
Mr. Voss?
Yes.
And I vote yes.
Thank you very much. Have a good night.
Get to work.
Next item on the agenda is cottages at the Garden Grove. This is for the proposed administrative building. Please come up.
Good evening, I'm Bob Seigert with Shop for Architects. Evening. We talked about it the last meeting, set the preliminary site plan review of this building. It's a 1-story administration building, 6,065, 66 square feet. This was originally approved as part of the cottages development, the planned development. And it's just now they're getting around to building it. We talked about, I think before, a lot of this has to do with where they're renting space now for the kitchen and for the offices. And they need something on site to really serve the development better. So the building is substantially in the character of the existing buildings that have already been built. In the interim, we did receive comments from Mr. Parrish, and we revised the cover sheet of the drawings to include a number of notes. It was in the upper right-hand corner of the cover sheet, I believe. It dealt with on-site parking spaces, the number of employees, building signage, building use, and hours of operation. And there were there were other changes made to the site drawings to note about contacting, the contractor needed to contact the town of Cicero to coordinate connection to the town sewer and as well the town highway department regarding the curb cut. So those changes were made to the drawings, to the site drawings, which you should have in your package there. I mean, other than that, there really weren't other changes to the set.
Okay, thank you. We'll open up the questions, Mr. Rosito.
So this, there was live move for the existing,
That's correct. That's correct.
it's only gonna come from that source.
That's correct.
Robbie?
So the kitchen space that you're building and showing in drawings, that's gonna prepare the food for
It's a,
10 cottages, I mean.
right. It's a prep kitchen. So I mean, the food will come somewhat prepared already. They will prepare it further and the final preparation is done at each of the buildings. So it's not, this is not like a restaurant kitchen.
So it's put together like in Loretto somewhere first and then comes, so there's like 3 steps to get it.
Exactly. Yes.
That's all it.
Wow.
No further questions.
Mr. Rosito?
No further questions.
No other questions? Mr. Rosito?
I'll say thanks.
Mark?
All set. Thanks.
You know what I mean?
All set.
Joe, would you offer the standard secret?
Proposal standard secret, that's for a motion.
Second.
Mr. Rosito?
Yes.
Mr. Abbott?
Yes.
Mr. Snyder?
Yes.
Mr. Voss?
Yes.
I vote yes. Neil, would you propose a motion for approval, please?
Yes, you're going to move for the adoption of resolution approving the application known as cottages at Garden Grove, Terra, Zagata, Meltzer Court, and Jamboree Drive, tax map number 09201, 27.1, proposed administrative building. This approval is strictly conditioned on the following: the color schemes and renderings and or elevations as presented by the applicant to the planning board in regard to this application shall be incorporated by reference into the site plan and the board's approval thereof. Accordingly, the actual project must substantially conform to the items presented herein.
Somebody like to make that motion?
So,
Do we have a second? Mr. Rosito?
yes.
Mr. Abbott?
Yes.
Mr. Snyder?
Yes.
Mr. Voss?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Love it.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is for the property at 7808 Ruby Road. This is proposed building and site renovation for Ames facility.
Good evening, Greg Stromer representing BNF Development Project. I wasn't, since last time we received some comment letter from Brian Gear, and I think we responded to all their comments. There's a couple of additional questions relative to a lighting plan, which we're just able to get the information today. It's pretty straightforward. If you'd like, I can hand it out to the board.
I haven't had a chance to look at it.
And I think the only comment that was open still, we said we're gonna, leave lighting in kind. In reality, we can't really do that. It's because the facade's changing so much. But the plan is simply to provide, I believe it's 6 wall packs, type lights. They're modern, nice guy compliant, glare, that sort of thing, on the walls around the drive aisles in front. And very little light spillage across the property lines. Like 0.1 or 0.2 foot candle for the most part. And just enough to light for safety reasons. If you'd like, I could go through the comments one by one.
Yes, let's do it.
Okay. So, there was a concern relative as far as number of parking spaces and how the spots on the site were going to be utilized. After talking to Avis, essentially they will have 2 employees on site at any given time. 4 employees total for the whole facility, but only 2 on site at any given time at the most. So that's 2 parking spaces there, maybe 4 at the most for clientele. They're expecting about 10 to 15 transactions a day. So you spread that out over the time period. You're really only talking maybe 1 on average per hour. Sure, you're gonna bunch up in the morning kind of thing. And 3 vehicles indoors for detailing purposes. So these cars, they come in, they get detailed on site. There's no repairs like oil changes or brakes. And if there's something like very minor, like a light or something, it might be something like that, but nothing more elaborate than that sort of thing. And then the remaining spots are for storage of fleet vehicles. They do have 3 in the back that are double stacked, but again, those are long term and they're not clientele or even employees. There's more storage on site. And you mentioned they need more cars in that, or maybe different vehicles. They rotate around off site to the airport, shuttle back and forth. So whatever's on site, they feel like that's just fine. The Department of Transportation, we gained a permit for them a few years ago, and there's no changes to that access or number of cars in front or the cars are parked, that sort of thing. And they have a lease agreement with New York State DOT for maintenance in front of those for usage of it, which they've been paying on for years. I think we got back in like 2013 or something like that. And we provide documentation in that respect. We will sign the sign on the handicap space. I think we've got it shown now on the plans for ADA requirements. And the sidewalk in front of the building is for ADA compliance standards. It is concrete. And we've labeled the typical dimensions for parking spaces there for council. We don't anticipate any modifications to utilities whatsoever. There's powers, water, sanitary, sewer service, that sort of thing. It really is very, very minor site modifications. Right at the front of the parking spaces, we're going to add the sidewalk and the planting in the front. We're going to remove asphalt in the back where it's not necessary to reduce impervious area of the site. And other than that, we really don't anticipate any additional paving or any changes in the site. There will be asphalt, that sort of thing, but nothing that dramatically changes the characteristics as far as water flow, that sort of stuff. We've got put the name and address of the owner, and adjacent property owners on the plan. We have provided a table with bulk regulations for the site. Hours of operations, we have in our letter, and that when the county says that they want them on the site plan, which is not a problem, we can do that. That kind of recent site plan. And but we figured if there's any other comments, we could address them, we just do it all at once. Landscaping details have been provided now, and proposed lighting. Prepared that plan for you. That there's comments or modification, we made that. I'd be happy to do. The freestanding sign, we do not know what their intent is for that, but they're going to come in and do something with that with you guys. So they should, their sign guy will typically come in and do it as a separate permit.
I thought there was something submitted with this for signage.
Yeah, the sign,
For the, but for the pylon sign?
Yeah. Pylon sign,
the square footage for the pylon sign and the wall sign is still under the maximum for the building. And it would be just simply Avis on the pylon sign and Avis on the wall sign. But
Is the pylon sign on the pole that's there now?
yes, same pole.
But that pole wasn't moved back ever after
It is being moved.
it is being.
It is going to be moved
Okay.
back. Yeah, it's moving back.
We, a number of years ago, said it had to move back because the state was on. it. So,
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, there was a variance. I think, right? Is that what-
They're going to move it.
There was a variance, no, they had to move it.
I know, I thought it wasn't, but that's okay. We'll check.
Yeah, I know it had to be moved. I thought it was.
I don't believe so. You do know it snows in Syracuse.
Really?
I've
been here a long.
Hold on one second. So,
What was that gentleman's name that was speaking?
Bob
Oh,
Abbott.
Robert, I'm sorry.
Oh,
Bob-
okay.
Bob Abbott.
There was no dumpsters on the site. Very minimal trash generated. Posts. ran out of the building. And no outside storage that we know of. That's about it.
They're really utilizing about 2/3 of the entire building. The whole northern part of the building really is empty. They're not even going to use it. It's just part of the building. They're leasing the whole building. But any kind of garbage or any garbage cans, they'll probably store on that side. And get them carted out.
Another business.
I'm sorry.
No.
okay, well, questions, Mr. Rosito?
The only work you're gonna do is just your fleet only, nothing, no outside vehicles coming in. Same thing with repairs and minor repairs, just your.
We were told that most they would be doing is detailing and very, very minor things like a light bulb going in a vehicle or something like that when it comes in. No brakes, no oil changes. none of that.
The total height inside the building is less than 9 feet. So it's not like they can put in lifts in there and put cars up, so. It's impossible to really do any major kind of car repairs.
Thank you.
Mr. Evans?
I'm looking here, south division, there's the main entrance to Avis.
The main entrance is going to be the southernmost entrance door.
And then the center part is also for Avis.
Yes, the whole building is for Avis. We're just replacing where the doors and the windows are located in the new design. It's where they're located now in the existing building. So, but obviously the glass and doors will all be replaced, but they're going to use the same openings.
How old is this structure? No, it's a long time ago.
I don't know the date.
That'd be a long time.
Yeah, I think it was, from looking at it, I think it was pieced together.
Piano store, right?
This will make it look a lot nicer.
I think it was a piano store years ago.
Yes.
Morgan store. And
Yeah.
I think that was there before 41.
Yeah.
That's why the lot was in place.
Yeah. No one will create a lot like that.
The entrance area. Off from 11. Restrictions on ins and outs?
There is no left turn out. There'll be a sign to that effect put in place.
It's already there.
It's already there, yes.
The right turn only out of the site is already in place and that's the same. It's really, the only time you can turn left out of there is maybe midnight.
Yeah,
And
and,
people going south on Route 11,
Yeah.
turn left.
Yeah, right.
If we put on the drawing, the note that we will only have minor repairs, no oil changes, no brake change, again, I'm thinking about 2 years from now when one of Steve's people walks in to do a fire check and we've got a guy changing oil on a creeper in the back room. So I think the drawing ought to indicate the level to which you're gonna do minor
I
repairs.
I'm wording that fits in with Steve's code, that sort of thing, that sort of thing. I mean, I think you're wording more like fire code, that sort of stuff. I don't know what wording, trying to think of everything they could possibly fix on a road car. It's got a flat tire or something, some note that works for the code office.
Now, you said you're expecting about 10 transactions a day.
10 to
That-
15.
that- uh,
10 to 15.
Okay, 10, so 10 to 15, those would be a combination of dropping a car off after they've rented it versus, because you don't have hardly enough space for 10 or 15 cars being rented out the same day. So I take it that 10 or 15 means that's a total transaction. Some of those will be people bringing cars back as well as people that are renting them.
I would,
Because otherwise
I would
it's-
assume that. I didn't ask the question in that particular manner. I just figured there's 10 people coming in there to either return or to pick up a car. What I was told is that they're not gonna have every car that they need necessarily on site. So they may need a little SUV or something, and they'll have it brought in from the airport. So if they've got all sedans and somebody wants SUVs, they're gonna shuttle them back in front of the airport, for stock and that sort of stuff. I did not ask them in particular if that's 10 in and 10 out or, or, you know what I'm saying? So I can't, I have honestly, even if it's 30 transactions a day, I mean, other than the cars, you know what I'm saying?
The way you
There's not
show
an
us,
awful lot.
where are you proposing, poor guy that shows up at 4 AM to plow snow, where are you proposing he's gonna plow?
It's, there is space in the back, if you've ever, like, we work for car dealerships, but they stack them so deep and dense, and they move them around. When they need to plow the back there, I can absolutely see them taking those cars, bring off the front for 15 minutes while the back gets plowed, and put them back in the back, and everything, shuffle them back and forth during those days. I mean, I could also see them doing it with, shuffling it out between the cars and plowing the drive-outs.
Okay, I would assume a heavy snow, you're gonna take them off site.
Oh, if it's blocking their cars, they'll be taking it offset, sure. Everybody does that with these, we get those 18-inch snowstorms, no reason to come through here. and stuff. You'll see, in our office park, there's a bobcat out there.
My last comment is the front of the building is beautiful. It's looked like a hellhole for as long as I can remember. You get kudos for that.
It's big a helmet. And I mean, I looked at this building, because when we got the original site approval, I think that's the first time I looked at the building, well over 10 years ago. And, it'll be a nice improvement.
Yep. Amen.
Mr. Watts.
I got a question on the parking, on the prints and everything. It shows the parking in the front of the building. I can't help but notice that on this one front corner, it's 13.8 feet. So this, all that parking across the front is going to be between the existing highway boundary and the original highway boundary. Is there a legal issue there? Or you can do that?
You can do that if you've got permission from DOT. So in this case, they've got what's called a right to use easement. And so they are allowed to use it. They have to pay DOT every year for that right, which they have now for years. And this is, it fits in there. There is enough room for them to back in and out, way traffic. And it's fairly, it's not a tremendous amount of space.
I didn't have a scale to actually measure between the two boundaries, so apparently though.
Yeah, I mean, you'll see, we've got it labeled up there, drive aisle. It's actually, there's enough, so if you,
24 feet, does that sound right?
yeah.
I can look it up on this one.
Yeah, so right here, we got the label, and that's from the back of the parking space.
Yeah, okay.
Two where the drive aisle is, and that's not quite to where the former highway boundary is. There's still a little more room on top of that. It's not huge, but there's enough room.
That answers my question.
That's one reason we're gonna move anything back further, they'll be doing enough for sidewalk and landscape.
This is definitely going to improve that area.
Yeah.
Can, Can any of those people back out and drive out? I mean, is there any, other than, can they drive across the sidewalk? Is there a barrier that causes the people to have to drive out at one spot rather than anywhere along the front of the building?
There's curbing there.
Curb, yeah, there is a curb.
Yeah, it's not great, but there's somewhat defined entrance there.
I wasn't sure what that meant, so. I mean, I wouldn't let,
What I will do is
the state would allow you to have that wide a opening.
Well, they don't. So, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna stripe it with yellow paint. I don't think we can put landscaping in there first. I don't think it'll survive, and I don't think it'll be a lot that close. But I will stripe that area between the 24 feet and the curb. We'll put some yellow stripe. Find that distance better. That's definitely.
Mr. Marzio?
You said you're repaving the lot, right?
I don't know to what extent the repaving is, but obviously they gotta bring it up. to-
Yeah, so it's pretty cracked.
Yeah.
I appreciate you taking out the asphalt and
Useless.
that. No, it's gonna be a great improvement.
Yeah.
The two employees, I assume one's counter and one's looking out that? Is that the setup?
I would assume that.
One's driving back and forth, getting the car.
Well,
That's a different.
you know, the only time of that, I got stuck at the first one, it's a similar one that's down on Teal Avenue in Burnett. They did, they had cars, for whatever reason, I got stuck in like an hour one time. It was interesting, I got to see how an operation like this works. And they come in with like 4 cars, right? And then, 5 cars, and they drop all 4, and they get in the other car and drive back up to the airport. And then that's how they were shuffling the cars back and forth, and they rotate them around. Over there, they're detailing them up back at a building over the tent, they don't have the little garages. Then there was one person in there doing the counter stuff. I think they had like, at some point in time, they might have had 2 people inside. But they're saying they're only gonna have 4 employees here. That's it. So if you have 3, they're gonna have less storage for cars. They're gonna bring them up to the airport. Way I'm looking at it.
The only other thing I'll throw out, just as a talking point, is going back in here, this is not for customers.
No,
Should a sign go up there saying that you want to keep customers from going back there?
I can't imagine why customers go back there. You got the
No,
parking
no parking in front.
space. Well, yeah, that's
Just it's a point of conversation. I don't know what else.
no customers beyond this point, something like that. We could do that. I think that would help. I kind of view it as like, as long as they're not operational, trying to set it up that way. There's really be no reason for a customer to drive back. But I agree, it's never really like a high access area, definitely, employees. will be different. But if you'd like a sign put up there saying no customer beyond this point, that's not a problem.
What do people think? Huh? I don't want to control signs.
Yeah, I don't think people would, I guess I agree with Greg. I mean, the only reason they would probably try to go back there again was if there was no parking spaces up front. In which case I kind of have to go back there, I guess. So, it's your call, I guess. I don't.
I'm not worried about this.
Security, I mean, is there a fence back? I mean, can I get to this area from? I guess, you read more and more about kids and whatnot going in and taking parts of the car apart. They're,
I think that there's a chain link fence along the south line
is there?
separating.
Yeah, I think the more you can make it not easy to grab something and run,
Yeah.
they gotta go out one way, then they pretty well leave that alone.
If you drive a car in the back, you can't drive anywhere else but that one access.
Mark, did you have anything else?
No, we're all set. Thank you.
No?
No,
How are we handling the hours of operation? You intend on coming back with that, or how?
I can put them on the plan. I've got a plan with them on there if you want.
Oh, you do?
Yeah. He wasn't gonna hand out, so there's nothing else.
That's right.
But if you like, there's something that, or I can drop it off more with transmittal, more formal, it's up to you.
Yeah. Can we approve it based on the plans he's got there?
Yeah, if he has it on the plan. I mean, if he has it on the plan, my hours of operation,
Come back.
or you can do a conditional, just say hours of operations shall not exceed X, Y, Z.
And I would leave it to Marktown, maybe give it to Marktown discretion, just in case we left the layer off or something. I don't think we did. But that, you know, I haven't put it on there real quick. In case something changes.
Will you just tell me what they are?
No.
They're in the letter and Mark's got it now.
I guess, yeah, I guess why don't we just get that, he's got them on here, hours of operation. So I guess I don't need a copy, if you just send an electronic copy, PDF fine, and you can submit these to the file, I guess. Do you have the project files up there?
It's in the
or-
office, but I'll take it.
Enough. Okay,
Miles on that.
yeah.
Mr. Rosito, would you propose the standard secret?
Yes, I propose our standard secret.
Second. Mr. Rosito.
Yes.
Mr. Abbott. Yes. Mr. Snyder.
Yes.
Mr. Ross.
Yes.
And I vote yes, secret passes. You propose a motion. Okay.
Yes, you're gonna move for a resolution approving the application known as Bassett and Fava Properties LLC 7808 Brewerton Road, proposed building and site renovations, Avis. This approval is strictly conditioned on the following: the color schemes, renderings, and or elevations as presented by the applicant to the planning board in regard to this application shall be incorporated by reference into this site plan and the board's approval thereof. Accordingly, the actual project must substantially conform to the items as presented herein. 2, minor repairs of vehicles will be permitted on the site, but the site shall not be used as a repair or body shop. No oil changes should be performed on the site.
Would somebody like to make that as a motion?
So
Second.
Me. Don.
Mr. Rosito.
yes.
Mr. Abbott.
Yes.
Mr. Snyder.
Yes.
Mr. Ross.
Yes.
I vote yes.
Thank you.
Nice movement.
Thank you.
Last item on the agenda is for Liberty Restaurant Holdings, property 7980 Brooklyn Road, the proposed Popeyes restaurant.
Evening, my name is Glenn Steenberg, I'm the engineer from the applicant, Liberty Restaurants. We have a proposal for a Popeyes restaurant located at 7980 Brewerton Road. The parcel is located just south of the Dairy Queen and just west of Marshall's, 5 below. Plaza. That's what it's south of. There's a Wetlands there. The parcel is approximately 0.8 of an acre in size. And is in the general commercial zone. It has been used for transient uses in the past, and there was a fireworks tent there at one point, mostly crushed stone, gravel on the parcel, little vegetation. It was always designed as an out parcel, I believe, when White Waters came to Dairy Queen, they had shown a restaurant there in a schematic version with no planned tenant. Recently, Liberty's Restaurant has approached them, looking for space for Popeye's restaurant. They're looking to build several of them in the northeast, Syracuse, Albany, Rochester. Projects going all over for this particular franchisee. It's proposed to construct a 2,145 square foot fast food restaurant with a dedicated drive-through lane that does split into 2 lanes for ordering kiosks, and then funnels back down into 1 lane for pickup. This seems to be all of the fast food restaurants are going through this drive-through style. It seems they can actually get the food prepared faster than they can order the food, so the 2 kiosks help them get more cars through the drive-through lane than in the previous setup, which was just a single dedicated ordering kiosk and drive-through. It's proposed to have the drive-through basically entering the site, the entrance that runs between the proposed development and Dairy Queen is an existing roadway. It's right in, right out off of Brewerton Road. We also have full service access through the existing retail facility to the east of the parcel. And you can see the loop road runs around the outside, just on the east of the property boundary, which would provide full service access. Basically entering the site with parking in the rear of the building pushed towards the front, and that dedicated drive-through lane running around the front of the building for the ordering and then exiting out the rear. It's proposed to develop 19 parking spaces behind the building for tenant or for customers who wish to patronize and actually sit down in the restaurant, which will have 46 seats. That's just over 2.5 one space for every 2.5 seats, which the franchisee feels very comfortable with. To give you some ideas, the Erie Boulevard Popeyes, which actually is we believe is a larger footprint, has 12 parking spaces. The North Syracuse Popeyes has, I believe, 27 spaces. So it's right in between the two of them. However, we did approach Whitewater's Group to ask them if there's some possibility to acquire some shared parking with the retail center behind it. And they did basically permit us and allow us to offer that up, that if parking spaces are full, the people can use the parking spaces in front of Marshall. This plan doesn't show it, but we've started working on generating a plan with a crosswalk to provide safe pedestrian access to the parcel from that parking lot, so that if they did indeed need those overflow spaces. However, again, the applicant feels very comfortable with the 19 parking spaces. They tend to do more of their business with drive-through these days than sit down within the restaurants. We did, as you can see, the dumpster location in the rear of the parcel, very similar to the way Dairy Queen has their dumpster location, almost identical. And I apologize, I should have brought my laser pointer. But see the dumpster location, and I did speak with Mr. Procopio before we submitted the plans, and he recommended we actually had that dumpster pushed right up to that intersection a little bit further to the north. And we did move it down to the south a little bit to increase the sight distance of vehicles stopping at that intersection. However, I would note that that intersection is a full all-way stop, all three directions, with stop bars located at each location and stop signs at least two of the locations. There's one in the Strike Island, probably that snowfall for us from that. We do show the 2 handicap parking spaces, right behind the building. They obviously have to meet ADA standards. The site was originally designed from a stormwater management standpoint, basically sheet drain to the southeast of the property, and ultimately there's a culvert which runs between the Dairy Queen and underneath that access road, and then into the facility stormwater management system, which then runs due east through the parking lot, that will be maintained in accordance with the original design plans. So we're here for sketch plan approval. We really want to get your idea and how you feel about the project, and make any changes and modifications as necessary before we move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Rosito? Mr. Addy?
Just looking here, I have some concerns about the east side of the building. Corner that will walk to there, that's like coming from the park. Concerned about it, they have to cross two-way traffic.
That is correct. We don't anticipate a lot of traffic coming through there. And with the crosswalk, we can provide stop bars. I anticipate the majority of the traffic is going to be moving into that. Majority of the incoming traffic will be moving into the drive-through, because there aren't a lot of parking stalls in that particular run. Most of the people trying to get parking spaces will probably pull in one of the two upper locations where whereas the majority of the traffic that we have probably people exiting the drive-through lane. We could regulate that with a stop bar.
Side of safety first.
I agree.
North side, you have 3 areas that you can pull in.
Yes, that's correct.
It's fine.
Thank you.
No real comments, except I'm glad the people that want to go south can go out the Wegmans main light rather than, if it's going to be the Home Depot, I'd have been a dead no. You can't drive out of the Home Depot and turn left without sitting for a couple of lights. So that's, I think it's a little confusing, but if this worked for you guys, that's obviously landscaping is going to be one thing that Mark and I are going to look at and be concerned about when you put in your final stuff.
Anything in particular you'd be looking for so that we can make sure we.
Just to make it look like people live there, and you know, we don't expect Christmas tree lights necessarily.
We'll make sure that we've got a nice landscape plan for it.
Just a comment, I like the idea that you could get in and out from the east end of that property. Traffic on the west end is horrendous.
What kind of traffic is this going to generate? Based on the ITE, you're looking at 70% of the peak hour for fast food restaurants.
It's a nightmare over there, but having the in and out like it is. In terms of landscaping, I look at trying to make it match the rest of what that water is. Okay.
Certainly do that.
How many seats did you say?
46.
46. How many employees at one time?
That's a good question. I would estimate between probably 6 to 10 employees. I can get that information for you from the owners and special ed.
Was there any conversation about how many spots would be shared by Whitewater?
There wasn't. When we spoke with them last week, basically they're kind of like, we don't really police the parking lot in front of Marshall's, most spaces that empty almost all the time, and more than welcome to use that. And you know, our suggestion was to provide some cross walk to provide safety for them. Then I would agree. I think that would be an excellent location for employees to park.
You know, something would be addressed with legalities on it, shared parking.
Yeah, here's what if you have shared parking, if you're gonna show it on your plan, you have to show us how you have the right to use it. So you'd have to show us your easement or agreement with the landowner.
Okay.
Okay, so if you put it on there and you say, I have, 15 spots, you have to have something in writing that will allow us, that's filed, that would allow us to say, okay, you actually do have the right to use that.
That's gonna have right now, the drive-through is 1 lane.
There's one lane, that is correct. And I understand it's ideal, and I would agree to be able to have that bypass lane around the outside of the drive-through. We don't have any parking around the drive-through, so it's not necessary. The applicant feels, and they've got it several locations where they do this. Once you're in the drive-through, you're in the drive-through. You're either ordering or you're not going to be able to pull out. Typically, once you get to the kiosk, if you've ordered already, you're not going to pull out, so that's not as good of a deal. And the traffic backup you would see from the kiosk moving in is purely visible to anyone entering the drive-through. It's not like you're driving around the backside of the building, all of a sudden you come to a traffic stop to find out there's 20 cars in front of you. So that's something that is visible to anybody.
I'm not sure we approved one that didn't have a second lane. I think
I don't think so.
it's been an issue. Accommodations have been made. Concern is breakdown or something like that. There's no way out.
Yeah.
Escape. So I would look at that again.
Is that your main concern, that if there were a breakdown, that they would have the ability to get the vehicle out of the way? More so than just a customer who decides they don't want to wait, drive out their house.
Never worry about them.
Okay, because that makes it a little easier to accommodate, and that's why I asked the question. We can come up with something to accommodate that concern.
Okay. What was the question?
Land lease or?
Mr. Pierce, I know you got to review any comments at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I think the circulation on this is difficult.
It's a tough spot.
It's tough. I mean, as you're entering in, you're making a 180-degree turn. I kind of like to see a turning movement on that. You know, the paving along this, I guess, south side is right up to the property line, which you're pushing snow onto somebody else's property. You've got no green space or any sort of buffer around it. You know, I think you could take and make this a one-way lane this way and maybe really curve this whole thing off so people are coming in and entering and exiting these areas through here. You could leave this two-way, I guess. Really, you could possibly make it one-way, quite honestly. If you take this and make it one-way out to here, and then you're bypassing this, that takes care of some of the issue here that you know, Chuck, you brought up about people, you know, a lot of traffic coming through here. So that would eliminate people trying, you know, coming out of here and going across through that area. You know, I think something's got to be done to look at this and make this a little bit better. I think it's a lot of things are going on there. There's no real curbing or anything to, you know, on these, I'd like to see these islands here curved, you know, to, again, kind of control this access drive, you know, going through there. So I think there needs to be a good look at this traffic circulation and what's going on there, and improve it.
I have no objection to curving the two islands, especially the outbound ones, because it's not going to really impede the stormwater movement through the site. Also, shouldn't impede snow removal to a major extent. Snow we get here, I do like to try to eliminate some curved islands to allow the snowplow guys to have some means of being able to move snow. We can look at the one-way traffic. I'm just trying to now how we can get one-way traffic through the site with 3 access lanes and parking, because inevitably you're going to have vehicles trying to get, if a vehicle enters the site in front of the building and it's one way counterclockwise to both of those lanes, in order, if they don't find, say they choose that middle bay, if there's a parking space there, they have to move back out around and go back in front of the building again to get to that third bay. And that would be my concern with making those one way.
Yeah, I think the number of parking spaces, I mean, if we've got, how many employees potentially?
Potentially 6 to 10 employees.
Yeah, so I mean, that 10 employees would take up all of this parking here, leaving you with 5, 6, 7 non-handicap spots for 40 some table spots, right? Is that, yeah, so that's not 1 to 2.5 anymore. Right. So I really think they do need to look at this shared parking. If you could push the employees off of that, we're back to where we need to be, and potentially some other things. So I think they've got to look at that shared parking to show that they have adequate parking for this, for the site.
And we'll look at that.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is a concept plan, obviously. I will wait until there's a full submission to do a review. We're talking about landscaping. I think it would be very critical to get some very good landscaping up front here. So we're not looking at this menu board and the cars waiting through there. I think you see that at Chick-fil-A. I don't think that's particularly attractive when you drive by there and see that. So, yeah, I think if you're asking for comments on what to do for landscaping, I think it should be pretty beefy and buffer that front area there. Signs need to be set back 20 feet from the front right-of-way line, just so you're aware of that.
Okay.
And 10 feet off of any other property line. So that's just some initial thought. But I do think, I think they're short on parking. I think we need to look at the traffic circulation and try and improve it.
Good catch, man, good catch.
A couple of things. The applicant didn't sign the application, so get that signed. That's when we get some kind of authorization from the applicant. So it's only signed by the property owner, one I saw. And then just general for the board to think about and the applicant, there's a difference between shared parking and dedicated parking. Okay, so if I'm in that site and they said, well, my landlord's going to give me shared parking with other tenants, let's say to either side of it, that's all well and good if there's parking available. Okay, so if I give you shared parking in a lot where there's never any parking available anyways, I really haven't added to your parking at all. As opposed to dedicated parking where you have an absolute right to use those spots and you can, tell other people to go or kind of. Which would mean you'd have to have something from your landlord telling you what's dedicated.
Right.
That's it.
Yeah, so you're raised in it.
I'm sorry, 3 boy deep. In comparison, when we're talking about flow, the McDonald's that is next to the Salvie Bay. I don't know if you guys ever been in there, but there's a similar situation with the in and out in the double kiosk or the ordering. And driving between Salvie Bay and there's parking spaces, it's practice. And then going through and coming out after the order, and pulling back out of traffic again from the side.
That's a little goofy over there.
Yeah, it is. And it just, the thought came to mind because I did go there once. And that was, it's a good example of an issue. Thank you.
Anything else here?
I appreciate your comments this evening. It'll give us something to work on. And we'll look forward to being back before you're doing so.
Great.
All right, thank
Good
you.
night. Thank you. Thank you. One comment, I just have one thing, the board received an extension request from Temple Velazio, the post car wash, for an extension of the site plan. Maybe that's tonight if any questions, have a chance to review. One push off next meeting. You're asking for an extension to December 31st, 6 months. Talk about the virus slowing things down, which is a little bit understandable. So, if you're comfortable, I'll make a motion to accept. Second. Mr. Rosito? Yes. Mr. Abbey?
Yes.
Mr. Snyder?
Yes.
Mr. Voss?
Yes.
Who seconded that?
Joe? Yes, who seconded? Anything else? Any questions or comments from the board? Mike, Steve? Mark? No. We have a motion to adjourn? So moved. Second? Meeting is adjourned. Thanks.